Everybody, welcome to today's video where I'm going to talk about why to not immigrate to Canada. Yes, you heard it well. Right, before we start, I'm going to just take a quick snapshot for the thumbnail. Thank you. Okay, so why not to immigrate to Canada? I have my personal experience with immigration to Canada, being a resident of Canada. I have met though many immigrants that I spoke to who were not happy after moving to Canada, after immigrating to Canada, and it was not just a cultural shock. It was not something they felt after they moved to the country. It was something that they felt for years and basically the whole time. So many of these people left Canada and returned to their home countries. It happens, it's known actually fact that many, don't know exactly the percentage, but it's a really high percentage of immigrants, permanent residents who move to Canada and they eventually go back home. They can't get used to the country. So I will go through the possible reasons. Let's see, let's start, because I want you to know these reasons why not to immigrate to Canada before you invest your time, especially money, and go for the immigration to Canada. So as you probably know, Canada is a very cold country. I call Canada an extension of Alaska. When you look at the map, Canada is really up there in the north, going all the way up to extreme cold conditions. Anyway, in the whole Canada, in the south of Canada basically, where all the people live, most of the population lives at the south on the border with the US, you get a winter that lasts between 4 to 6 months. That's half of your year living in a proper winter. I'm talking snow, I'm talking temperatures reaching minus 30 degrees centigrade. I've been there, I lived in those conditions. That's very normal in Quebec, in all East Canada, in most of the Canada, basically the whole Canada except the far west, where it's the winter is a little bit milder and it rains a lot. It's more like an English weather in the west. So if you enjoy this kind of weather, great. If you are from a warm country and it's actually not that bad there, I would think seriously about how will you be surviving the rest of your life in such cold conditions in Canada. When you go shopping for your jacket, winter jacket in Canada, you don't shop for fashion. Don't go for fashion because you won't be good during that cold long winter. When you're buying a jacket, when you see there are tags on these winter jackets in Canada which say like minus 20 degrees centigrade, minus 30 degrees centigrade, minus 40 degrees centigrade, minus 50 even. I saw that. I bought a jacket which said minus 30. I was just fine living in the capital in Ottawa. So it's extremely cold, lots of snow. For people from North America maybe or from Europe, it's not a big deal. We are used to cold winters. But for people coming from Africa, South America, from warm countries, even from Southern Europe, it's a problem. So think about that. Super cold weather. Next, in Canada, if you are used to your fresh market, local produce, small shops, it's not that common. There's not much of that. If there are shops, small shops, they are very expensive, but usually you just have big chains, big shopping centers where you will buy your stuff, and it's always the same, and there's not much variety. So no small shops, just big chains. Food and groceries that you're going to buy are expensive, and prices of them also go up in winter. As winter starts, which might take up to 6 months, your groceries will be even more expensive than before, and the groceries are more expensive than in the US or Europe anyway. So groceries are expensive. The quality is not there, trust me on that. You can buy your tomatoes, your cucumber, vegetables, fruit, smell them, and there is no smell, there is nothing. It's all imported from the US. Most of the stuff is from the US. That's why it's more expensive, because they buy it from them, and it's not good quality. I've saw in the shops in Canada on the shelf selling fruit, vegetables that were rotting, that were in the state that they would never be put on the shelf if it was in Europe. So very bad quality of fresh produce, very bad quality of groceries. There's no standards like we have in Europe, in European Union. It's basically similar to the US standard, very processed, full of hormones, antibiotics, unhealthy, tasteless, expensive. So you will need a car. In Canada, cars are relatively cheap, especially used cars, because people buy and change their cars very often. So if you want to go shopping, you will need a car, so count with that. Having these harsh winters, Canadians use very harsh salt on their roads. Your car will be rusty, will start losing basically its body very, very soon. I never saw that in any country in the world, but only in Canada. Rusty cars that look like Emmental cheese, and it's very normal for Canadians. That's how it is. So you will need a car, and your car will end up in very bad shape if you will be driving it on Canadian roads in winter. Canadians. Let's talk about Canadian people. Canadian people, well, it depends if they are the older generations, yeah, like the third, fourth generations of Canadians, or they are newcomers. But generally, Canadians are quite boring people. Canadians don't fly, don't travel much. You are lucky if you meet someone who's been to the US. So when you talk with them, for example, I had many colleagues, and all those Canadians I spoke to, we had nothing to talk about. They didn't know anything about the world. They didn't know anything. They knew about their province. They maybe knew something about the politics, whatever they were shown on the news. They knew about ice hockey and these kind of things, but nothing about the world. So very boring conversations, and they are very private. They don't talk much about stuff. They like to watch their series on Netflix, and they just talk about that. Of course, no one reads books, and absolutely no one reads non-fiction or watches non-fiction. So quite boring people, and similar like Americans, not really open and not really honest, quite fake people. So they say everything is great and amazing, but it's not. So don't rely on what they tell you. Don't trust them. They are just trying to be always positive and happy, even if they are not feeling that way. So when you immigrate to Canada, you are the first generation Canadian. Yes, after 3 years of staying in Canada as a permanent resident, you can apply for the Canadian passport, Canadian citizenship. You will probably struggle, yeah, because you will live most of your life so far in your home country, and you will struggle with the winter, with the food, with the culture, with everything else I will mention in a minute. So you're doing it probably for your children, for the second generation. Your children will become Canadians. They will be very, very Canadian, and they will be fine because they don't know better or else. That's something else. But for the first generation, it might be hard. If you come from North America, from the US, for example, if you come from the Soviet Union, if you come from Africa, from very poor conditions, from third world countries, Canada might be good for you because you are going to the better. It will be just cold. That's anyway what I heard from my colleagues, from people from former Soviet Union, from Nigeria, from Haiti. They were better off in Canada and they were alright, but it wasn't great. So let's continue. Unemployment in Canada is actually quite high. There are places where there's really not much work, and there's a city and there is nothing for hundreds of kilometers or miles if you want, and there is no jobs. So it might be difficult for you to find a job in exactly that field in which you were working before. So you should be patient and set up a plan which might take few years for you to go to do certain things, qualification and in Canada in order to get to the position you had before in your home country. Yes, it will pay off, you will be paid relatively well, but it will take time, so you have to be patient and expect that. Housing. When it comes to housing, there's a lot of apartment buildings in Canada which look terrible. They are really in very bad shape. They were all built like 40, 50 or more years ago. Most of them are in original condition, very ugly looking. They have window frames made of aluminum, very old ugly kitchens, terrible conditions, often with bed bugs. And I don't know if you ever heard of bed bug. Bed bug is something very common in Canada. So the housing conditions when you will be renting from these apartment buildings might be very bad, unless you can pay more for a new build and live there. So just be aware of that. Yes, there are other countries that have immigration program like Australia or New Zealand. I would suggest, if you are open, if you don't have to immigrate to Canada, to look at those options because those countries are warmer. I know maybe too far away from where you come from, but warmer, definitely warmer than Canada, and I would say maybe even better. I would say better. Yeah, I will say better than Canada. So the rents are quite high in Canada, especially in the West Canada. In Ottawa, capital, rents are quite low. That's okay. So bigger the city, higher the rents, but the rent will probably anyway take half of your income, half your monthly income will go to the rent. So it's relatively high. Properties, it depends where, but in the West Canada, super expensive. In the rest of the country, cheaper, especially in Ottawa, quite cheap. Okay, be ready if you are moving to Quebec. If you speak French, great, but in Quebec they don't speak French, they speak Quebecois. Quebecois is a very old-fashioned French kind of dialect, which sounds super arrogant, and I don't know why. If it sounds arrogant, maybe it's arrogant. The people that use it are, I don't know. I don't speak French, but be aware of that. Let's see how we will get along with the people from Quebec. So moving to Canada, if you come from Europe, and there is very low immigration to Canada from Europe. Most of the immigrants come from Africa and from former Soviet countries. South America not much, because they don't have the money needed, the show money. And why Europeans are not moving to Canada is obvious. It's going to worse, from better to worse, so why would you do that? Also, when you fly from, let's say, Germany, Frankfurt to Ottawa, it's like flying in time. You're going to the past. Yeah, Canada is quite behind in many things, and it's visible. So be aware of that. Maybe you like the past, and then Canada will be great for you. The transportation in Canada is very expensive, no matter if it's train, bus, public transport, or city transport, or airplanes. Everything very expensive and very not that great. Not great at all, quite outdated, not a good service. Just be aware of that. This is partly because the taxes in Canada are high. That's another point. Your income tax is combined of two taxes. It's a federal tax and provincial tax. So about 40% of your income, which might be higher probably, for example, than in Europe. Yes, in Canada you will earn more per hour doing the same job, but you will pay 40% of that, more or less. Depends on a province. 40% will go back to the budget of Canada. So if you like summer and hot beach, summer on the beach and sea and all that, then it's not happening in Canada. Yeah, you need to fly to Cuba at least, or to Dominican Republic. Most of the Canadians that manage to leave the country and travel they go on holidays to Cuba and Dominican Republic, or maybe you will go somewhere else. But in Canada you don't have those sandy beaches and hot weather. Okay, so high taxes I mentioned. Well, Canada is an empty space. If you like solitude, and if you don't mind that there are no roads, so basically you will have nowhere to go by your car. Just around the southern border of Canada, there are roads, there are highways. There's one highway that goes across, yeah, basically one, and then some roads going up to the north for about a few kilometers, and that's it. Above that, all that what you see on the map, the big Canada, there's nothing. There are basically almost no roads. There's some, I don't know, Hudson Bay, but there's nothing. It's like totally no civilization. There's nothing. Just forest, some natives, animals, whatever, growing there, but you won't get anywhere by car. I was there by car. I tried somewhere in Quebec. I almost destroyed the car. It's impossible. So some people might like that. Yeah, the quality. Whatever you buy in Canada is of a very poor quality. You have a choice. Yeah, you can buy expensive car of, for example, Toyota from Japan, which will be good quality. Otherwise, you have the American brands, American cars, American food, American washing machines, dryers, and everything, and clothing, and it's a very bad quality, and it will be expensive. So. What else? The culture. Canadians, yes, they will talk with you maybe about ice hockey, beer, and Tim Hortons. Yes, that's about it. If you don't know what's Tim Hortons, that's like a Canadian, most popular Canadian fast food chain, famous for their sweets, donuts, and chocolate, hot chocolate and coffee, stuff like that. So that's what Canadians can talk about. The new coffee they sell now at Tim Hortons, and how was the ice hockey. So if you usually have conversations about other things, well, then not with Canadians. Yeah. Let's close this by saying, by moving to Canada, you and your kids for sure are becoming North Americans, are becoming like US people, Canadians, very similar. You are losing your heritage, whatever you had from your home country, unfortunately. Yeah. For me and for many people I know who left Canada after becoming permanent residents, it wasn't a happy story. We were disappointed by Canada. So be very careful. Listen and watch more videos and talk to people. Don't just move to Canada. Don't just immigrate because you qualify and you have the money to do it. If you are a doctor, engineer, or successful in your country, but your spouse or someone wants, we could do better. We could go to US or Canada or some Australia, New Zealand. so that they will be persuaded to go to Canada. Why? What for? You're doing well in your country, you have your place, you have your land, you have your culture, you have your people. Do you need to go to Canada, really? So I hope this video opened your eyes. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends who are thinking about moving to Canada. Subscribe to my channel and watch another video I had where I'm talking why to move to Canada, because there are also reasons why to move to Canada. Yeah, share it, comment, give me your experience, and have a great day. Thank you so much.